They planned for weeks. In some cases, months. They scouted the locations. They studied the layout. They timed the response windows, mapped the getaway routes, assigned roles, and rehearsed until the execution felt airtight. They had drivers and lookouts and bagmen. They had stolen vehicles with clean plates. They had masks and gloves and weapons. They had studied every variable, everything except the one that brought them down. Because here's the thing about a massive heist. The bigger the score, the more moving parts. The more moving parts, the more chances for something to go wrong. A surveillance camera at an angle nobody accounted for. A customer's phone capturing the getaway plates. Or watch a single stolen Rolex that had a GPS chip hidden inside it, quietly broadcasting its location as a crew drove north up the highway, cash in their bags, celebration already beginning. Tonight on Behind the Crime, we are covering two of the most brazen, most documented, most cinematically audacious jewelry store heists in recent American history, and we are following both of them all the way to where they ended. Not with the thieves counting money in a back room somewhere. Not with a cold case file gathering dust in a detective's drawer. We are following them to the arrest, to the federal charges, to the courtroom, because the crews behind these robberies believed they had thought of everything. They were wrong about that, and the story of how they were caught is, in some ways, more remarkable than the story of how they struck. San Ramon, California, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2023, 2:45 p.m. The City Center Bishop Ranch shopping complex in San Ramon is a kind of upscale outdoor mall that you find in the more affluent corridors of the Bay Area. Restaurants, retailers, a valet section for the lunch crowd. In the late afternoon of a Saturday, it is busy in a comfortable way. Families, couples, people spending part of a long weekend in the general glow of a city that has grown prosperous and takes a certain quiet pride in that prosperity. Heller Jewelers has been part of that landscape for years. A well-regarded local institution, the kind of store where people come for engagement rings and anniversary gifts, where the cases are full of things that matter to people, Rolex watches, diamond rings, pieces that represent significant moments in someone's life. On March 17th, 2023, at precisely 2:45 p.m., a Jeep Grand Cherokee and an orange Dodge Charger pulled into the valet section of City Center Bishop Ranch. 7 suspects got out of those 2 vehicles. They were wearing hooded sweatshirts, long pants, ski masks, and gloves. 4 drivers stayed in the cars, ready to move the moment the job was done. They moved fast. They moved like people who had done this before, or had at least rehearsed it many times. One suspect drew a handgun and pointed it at the security guard at the entrance. He grabbed the guard away from the door and shoved him hard against the wall. Another suspect pointed his gun at employees and the roughly 10 customers inside the store, including children, and demanded everyone get on the ground. The other 5 suspects began smashing display cases with hammers, loading items into duffel bags as fast as they could move. Think about what that scene looked like from inside the store. You have come to a shopping center on a Saturday afternoon. Maybe you are looking at watches. Maybe you are picking up a piece of jewelry you had repaired. Maybe you have your child with you. And suddenly the front door is a man with a gun, and another man is pointing a weapon at you from the other direction. And all around you, the sound of glass shattering as cases that held hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry are systematically destroyed. The entire incident, from the moment those suspects walked in to the moment they were back in their vehicles, took just under 1 minute, 50-something seconds. That is all it took. When San Ramon Police Department officers arrived, the 4 cars were already fleeing. The suspect escaped in possession of approximately $1.1 million in stolen jewelry, including multiple Rolex brand watches. They were gone. The store was destroyed. 10 customers were traumatized, and $1 million in jewelry was moving north toward Oakland in a caravan of stolen vehicles. On the surface, it looked like a clean escape. It was not. The watch that talked here is a detail that changes everything. The detail that nobody in that crew knew about when they loaded those Rolex watches into their duffel bags and drove away from City Center Bishop Ranch. One of the Rolex watches they had stolen was outfitted with a hidden GPS tracking chip. The moment it was reported stolen, that chip was activated, and it started talking. San Ramon Police Chief Denton Carlson described what happened next. We started receiving updates that the watch was traveling into the Oakland area and into the San Leandro area. It was traveling around, and then it became stationary for a while. The watch led investigators directly to the movement pattern of one of the suspects. Law enforcement tracked the GPS signal and located it traveling alongside a specific vehicle, a car driven by a man named Paul Christopher Tonga. He was seen driving parallel to the track location of the watch by officers in San Mateo County. They had him, and once they had Tonga, the investigation opened up like a door. A search warrant executed on his vehicle in the days following the robbery revealed multiple loaded firearm magazines, large quantities of methamphetamine, and masks that were matched through coders. The FBI's combined DNA index system to Tonga and another suspect from a watch, one watch, with a chip nobody in the crew knew existed. Investigators served additional search warrants and obtained access to phone records and iCloud data. What they found in Tonga's iCloud account included screenshots of a conversation hinting at information from a possible law enforcement insider, a detail that added an additional layer of investigation to an already sprawling case. Phone records mapped out the suspect's movements on the day of the robbery and in the week leading up to it. The investigation used automated license plate reader technology to confirm that the robbery had been executed in an organized fashion by at least 11 suspects who had participated in various roles during the heist, some as robbers inside the store, others as drivers and lookouts outside. 11 people, coordinated, assigned roles, and now, thread by thread, identified. 2 of the suspects, investigators found, had gone to a casino in the days after the robbery. Federal prosecutors alleged they were attempting to launder the proceeds from the heist. The casino also has cameras. The arrests on July 26, 2023, roughly 4 months after the St. Patrick's Day robbery, 4 suspects were arrested and booked into Santa Rita Jail on no-bail federal holds. The Department of Justice filed a federal complaint in the Northern District of California. The suspects charged were Paul Christopher Tonga, Sunya Mafilio Farvesi, Ryan Kentrell Montgomery, and Kyle Vehikite. 1 suspect remained at large. John Ioan Tapu, 30 years old, had been charged but had not been found. He had been moving, crossing state lines, as federal prosecutors noted in court documents, specifically by his own description in text messages, to evade law enforcement. He knew they were looking. He was running. On September 26, 2023, the San Ramon Police Department assisted the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force and the Oakland ATF in locating and apprehending Tupu. He was a 5th and final suspect charged in connection with the robbery. All 5 of the main suspects were now in federal custody. 4 of the 5 defendants eventually pleaded guilty and were sentenced in 2024 to prison terms running from roughly 3 to 3.5 years. The final defendant, Ryan Kentrell Montgomery, was sentenced in 2026 to 2 years in federal prison for his role in the heist. And here's a detail that closes this chapter with a kind of poetic finality. Investigators noted that if it weren't for the GPS device hidden inside that stolen Rolex, the efforts on the part of the suspects to avoid authorities, which included crossing state lines and erratic movements, might have resulted in a cold case. A cold case. A $1 million robbery that would have sat in a file, unsolved, while the crew moved on to the next one, which, given what happened just over 2 years later, they almost certainly would have done. They thought they had stolen a watch. They had stolen their own arrest. The same store, 2 years later, September 22nd, 2025, 2 years and 5 days after the St. Patrick's Day robbery, Hella Jewelers reopened fully after all the necessary security upgrades and insurance processes had run their course. The store had, understandably, taken security more seriously. New security doors had been installed, doors that required a security guard to actively press a button to allow customers to exit. An additional layer of protection against exactly the kind of rapid takeover the store had experienced in March 2023. On Monday, September 22nd, 2025, those new security doors were put to the test. And this time, the crew was bigger, much bigger. A group of nearly 25 people ransacked Hella Jewelers at City Center Bishop Ranch on a Monday afternoon. They were armed with at least 3 guns, crowbars, and pickaxes. They smashed display cases and took jewelry estimated at approximately $1 million in merchandise. 25 people in one jewelry store. On a Monday afternoon, the new security doors actually worked. After the suspects entered, the doors locked automatically behind them. The group was momentarily trapped inside their own crime scene. What happened next was captured on cell phone video and spread across social media within hours. At least one suspect fired multiple rounds at a locked glass door to blast their way out. They fired a gun to escape, inside a shopping mall. On a Monday afternoon, San Ramon PD had been positioned to respond faster than ever, in part because a 2023 organized retail theft prevention grant had funded a drone that was deployed to the scene almost immediately. The drone was first on scene and captured video of the suspects fleeing the store and entering their vehicles. Officers initiated a vehicle pursuit but called it off when speeds exceeded 100 miles per hour, citing public safety concerns. With help from nearby agencies, drone footage, surveillance cameras, and bystander videos, police ultimately arrested 7 suspects. 2 firearms and some of the jewelry were recovered, including items that appeared to have been dropped or discarded during the chaotic escape. Several of the getaway vehicles were reported stolen. The suspects ranged in age from 17 to 31. All were believed to live in the Oakland area. Police said they believe the group is connected to similar crimes across the San Francisco Bay Area. San Ramon Police Department Lieutenant Mike Pistello was direct at the press conference following the arrests. "This is not their first time doing something like this," he said. He was right, and the investigation into the full network behind the second attack, the connections to other Bay Area robberies, the chain of organized retail crime that had been escalating for years, was just beginning. Heller Jewelers thanked the community for an outpouring of support after the attack and announced plans to reopen the same store. The second time, 2 crews, one with 7 people, one with nearly 25, both of them believing, in their own way, that the score was worth the risk. In the first case, a GPS chip in a Rolex proved them catastrophically wrong. In the second case, a drone in the air and cameras on every surface in that shopping complex made sure that 25 people who believed they could walk into a store, fire a gun at a door, and drive away at 100 miles per hour were going to be identified, tracked, and arrested. Scene shift, Hartsdale, New York, December 16th, 2024, 11:07 a.m. Now we move across the country, from the Bay Area to Westchester County, New York, a suburb about 30 miles north of New York City. A Monday morning in mid-December. Christmas shopping season in full swing. A strip mall on North Central Avenue in the town of Hartsdale. Tarrytown Jewelers sits inside the Westchester Square shopping plaza, a reputable local store. The kind of place where people buy things that mean something, engagement rings, anniversary gifts, luxury watches for milestones worth marking. At exactly 11:07 a.m. on December 16th, 2024, a dark blue Jeep Grand Cherokee pulled up to the front of Tarrytown Jewelers. It was a stolen vehicle. The license plate on it was also stolen, taken from a different vehicle to make the car harder to trace. 4 men got out. They were dressed in all black. They were masked, and they were carrying sledgehammers. They sledgehammered their way through the front window of the store. Then they moved to the display cases inside and began smashing those too. While innocent customers cowered in fear, one surveillance video captured customer being briefly moved out of the way so a robber could get to the jewelry beneath the display counter. The crew filled bags with stolen goods as fast as their hands could move. When they were done, they walked out with approximately 70 Rolex watches worth around $1 million, and additional diamond rings, necklaces, and earrings valued at another $700,000. The total haul, approximately $1.7 million in luxury goods. They got back in the Jeep. They drove back to New Jersey, and then they made the decision that sealed their fate. The photograph that became evidence a few hours after the robbery. Kevin Williams drove to New York City's Diamond District, the stretch of 47th Street in Manhattan where roughly 2,600 independent jewelry businesses operate in a single block. Wilson returned to the shared residence in Newark. That afternoon, the crew gathered, and they took photographs. Williams, Wilson, and their co-conspirators took pictures of themselves holding large stacks of cash. These photographs were recovered from a suspect's own phone during the investigation. The surveillance camera footage showed them committing the crime. Their own phone showed them celebrating it, hours later, with the cash. But investigators were already following them before they even saw those photograph cell phone data place both Williams and Wilson in the vicinity of Tarrytown Jewelers on the morning of the robbery. Their phones then traveled together to Newark that afternoon. Williams' phone, in between, registered in the Diamond District. Every movement, every location, all of it recorded by the phones they were carrying. Both phones were also traced to the vicinity of jewelry store robberies in Nassau County in the summer and fall preceding the December heist, suggesting this was not their first operation. Wilson already had pending grand larceny and burglary charges related to a jewelry store burglary in Woodbury, New York, from August 2024. They were part of a pattern, a multi-borough, multi-month pattern of jewelry store targeting that federal investigators had already begun assembling into a larger picture. In one of the more remarkable details to emerge from the federal complaint, Wilson had actually checked local news coverage about the robbery after the fact, reading an article about the Hartsdale heist from his own phone. He robbed the store. Then he went home and read the news article about it, from the same phone that was pinging towers in the vicinity of the store all morning. The federal net closes March 25th, 2025. For 3 months and 9 days, Kevin Williams and Byron Wilson continued their lives in New Jersey. Whatever they were doing with the money, with the watches, with the proceeds of what they had taken from that store, they were doing it believing that December 16th was behind them. On the morning of March 25th, 2025, federal agents arrested both men in New Jersey. Williams was 26 years old. Wilson was 24. Acting United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York Matthew Podolsky announced the charges: conspiracy to commit Hobbs Act robbery and Hobbs Act robbery, each of which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison. They appeared before U.S. Magistrate Judge Judith McCarthy in federal court in White Plains, New York. She ordered them held without bond. Podolsky said in his statement, "Today's arrest should make clear that if you commit such brazen and dangerous crimes in this district, we will find you and hold you responsible." 2 other co-conspirators involved in the robbery were still being sought at the time of the arrest announcement. The investigation was continuing. The net was still tightening. And the photographs, the ones they had taken of themselves with stacks of cash hours after the robbery, smiling, were now sitting in a federal evidence file in the Southern District of New York. What both of these cases tell us about modern heist investigations, let's take a breath and look at what these 2 cases have in common, because the parallels are more instructive than they might first appear. 2 highly organized robbery operations. 2 crews that invested significant planning into their crimes. Stolen vehicles, clean plates, masks, coordinated roles, rapid execution. In San Ramon, the operation was drilled down to under 60 seconds inside the store. In Hartsdale, it was a surgical strike at 11 in the morning on a December Monday when the plaza would be busy enough to be chaotic, but not so crowded that response would be instant. Both crews had clearly thought about the human elements. They had thought about security guards. They had thought about camera angles, or believed they could move fast enough that the footage wouldn't be clear enough to matter. They had thought about escape routes and getaway vehicles and putting distance between themselves and the scene. What neither crew fully accounted for was a digital infrastructure that now surrounds everything they touched. In San Ramon, a GPS chip in a single stolen watch. One device, broadcasting its location in real time, while the crew drove away believing they were home free. That chip connected to a car connected to a driver connected to DNA evidence connected to iCloud data connected to phone records, phone record connected to every other person who was in contact with Tonga on the day of and in the days leading up to the robbery. One watch, one chip, an entire network unraveled. In Hartsdale, 2 cell phones that never stopped reporting their locations. From New Jersey to Hartsdale and back. From Hartsdale to the Diamond District. From the Diamond District to a shared apartment in Newark where photographs were taken with stolen cash. Every single movement logged and stored and available to federal investigators the moment they built their case and pulled those records. They carried their own arrest in their pockets. And in both cases, both of them, investigators also had to do real, sustained, painstaking work. The San Ramon investigation ran for months, involved federal prosecutors, ATF agents, U.S. Marshals, local detectives, iCloud warrants, casino records, and a hunt that eventually crossed state lines to find the 5th suspect. The Hartsdale investigation required 3 months of building the digital trail before agents were ready to move. These weren't simple cases. They required dedicated teams working methodically, but the technology, the GPS, the cell towers, the surveillance cameras, the suspect's own phone and its news article check after the robbery gave those teams a foundation that previous generations of investigators could only have dreamed of. The victims who are never quite mentioned here is a part of these stories that gets less attention than the heist mechanics and the arrest logistics. The people inside those stores. In San Ramon, there were approximately 10 customers inside Hella Jewelers on a Saturday afternoon, including children. A suspect pointed a gun at them and demanded they get on the floor. They did not know, in that moment, whether this was going to end with broken glass and stolen property or something far worse. They did not know the timeline. They did not know that in under 60 seconds it would be over and the crew would be gone. They knew there were guns in the room and they were on the floor. In Hartsdale, innocent customers cowered in fear for their safety while masked men with sledgehammers destroyed the store around them. One customer was physically moved, pushed aside, so a robber could access the jewelry display case they were standing near. How do you process that? How do you go back to a shopping center on a weekday morning after being physically moved by a masked man with a sledgehammer while his partner watches you from behind a weapon? These stores have reopened. The insurance claims have been filed. The arrests have been made. The federal charges have been filed. The system, in both cases, has done what it is supposed to do. But the customers who were in those stores on those days, they carry something that no arrest resolves. The moment when the comfortable, ordinary reality of a Tuesday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon broke open and revealed something they had never had to be this close to before. That is a cost that doesn't make the charge sheet. The organized retail theft epidemic, these cases don't exist in isolation. They are part of a pattern that has been building for years and that law enforcement agencies across the country, and particularly in California, have been watching with increasing urgency. According to 2024 FBI data, there were 5,715 documented instances of commercial cargo theft, with a total value of stolen property exceeding billions of dollars. And that data only captures what was reported. Experts widely believe the actual figures are significantly higher. The jewelry sector has been hit particularly hard. Smash and grab operations targeting high-end watch retailers and jewelry stores have surged across the Bay Area, Los Angeles, New York, and other major metro areas. The operations have grown more organized, more coordinated, and more brazen over time. From 7 people in March 2023 to nearly 25 in September 2025 at the same store. San Ramon Police Lieutenant Pistello said directly of the September 2025 attackers, "This is not their first time doing something like this. Law enforcement has been adapting." The organized retail theft ground that funded the San Ramon Police Department's drone, the drone that was first on scene for the 2025 attack and captured footage of all the getaway vehicles, was a direct response to the pattern that the 2023 attack had revealed. San Ramon PD credited that grant and that drone as critical to their ability to respond quickly and identify suspects. The GPS tracking inside luxury items is also expanding. What happened with the Rolex at Hella Jewelers in 2023, the chip that quietly transmitted its location as the crew drove away, is becoming standard practice in the luxury goods industry. Not just watches, jewelry pieces, high-value items of all kinds. The thieves are stealing tracking devices embedded in the very things they are trying to steal. The technology that catches them is often hidden inside the loot. Final reflection: 2 heists. 2 cities on opposite ends of the country. 2 groups of people who planned carefully, moved fast, and believed, as people who commit crimes always believe, in some fundamental way, that they had figured out the system. The crew that hit Hella Jewelers on St. Patrick's Day 2023 believed that getting out in under 60 seconds would outrun any investigation. They were wrong. A GPS chip in one watch unraveled their entire operation, and every single one of the 5 main suspects ended up in federal custody, convicted, sentenced. Kevin Williams and Byron Wilson believed that driving a stolen Jeep from New Jersey to Westchester County on a Monday morning gave them enough distance and anonymity to pull off a $1.7 million robbery and return home clean. They were wrong. Their cell phones tracked every step of their journey. Their own photographs celebrated what they thought was successful crime. Both of them are now facing the possibility of 20 years in a federal prison. And the crews that hit Hella Jewelers a second time in September 2025, 25 people, guns, crowbars, pickaxes, a gun fired at a door to escape, learned that the store they had targeted twice now had a drone overhead before they made it to their getaway vehicles. Here is what all of these cases demonstrate, stripped down to its simplest form. The planning that goes into a heist has not kept pace with the technology available to investigators. The cell phone that everyone carries is a location tracker, a photograph album, a movement record, and a communication log, all of it accessible with the right warrant. The luxury goods that are worth stealing increasingly carry hidden technology that reports their location in real time. The cameras that surround commercial spaces have multiplied and improved to the point where masked individuals who believe they are invisible are actually being photographed from multiple angles simultaneously. And perhaps most importantly, the investigators who work these cases are patient. They are not in a race against the clock after the initial shock of the crime. They are building a case methodically for as long as it takes. San Ramon worked their investigation for months. The Hartsdale case ran for over 3 months before the arrests happened. Every thread pulled carefully, every warrant filed precisely. The crews who hit these stores were operating on adrenaline and the assumption that the confusion of the moment would give them enough cover to disappear. They disappeared for a little while, and then, one by one, they reappeared, in handcuffs, in federal courtrooms, looking at sentences that measured in years and in decades. The heist, it turns out, was never as clean as it looked in the 60 seconds it took to execute it. Before you go, I want your comments on these cases because the questions they raise are genuinely interesting. The Rolex GPS chip is a detail that everyone who hears this story remembers. A $1.1 million robbery unraveled by a single tracker hidden inside one watch. Do you think the people behind these heists will ever fully adapt to the technology working against them? Or does the nature of organized theft always create a trail that investigators can eventually follow? And this, the second attack on Hella Jewelers, nearly 4 times as many people as the first attack, at the same store, suggests that the first crew getting caught didn't deter anyone. What does that tell us about the mindset behind organized retail theft? Is this about desperation? Organization? Something else entirely? Drop your answers in the comments. And tell me, which detail in these 2 stories shocked you the most? For me, it's Wilson checking the news article about the robbery from the same phone that was pinging towers near the store all morning. The audacity of that is almost impossible to process. If this episode got your attention, share it. Because the employees at Hella Jewelers who watched masked men smash their store not once but twice deserve to have people understand what these crews are actually doing in their communities. And because the federal investigators who spent months pulling on digital threads to bring these cases to court deserve to have that work seen. This has been Behind the Crime. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we will see you in the next one.